Despite their constant public feuding, American and Pakistani military and intelligence services have worked together closely for decades on counterterrorism in South Asia. Both services often find it useful to engage in public feuds, to cover their asses, as the retired official put it, but they continually share intelligence used for drone attacks and cooperate on covert operations. At the same time, it's understood in Washington that elements of the ISI believe that maintaining a relationship with the Taliban leadership inside Afghanistan is essential to national security. The ISI's strategic aim is to balance Indian influence in Kabul. The Taliban is also seen in Pakistan as a source of jihadist shock troops who would back Pakistan against India in a confrontation over Kashmir. Adding to the tension was the Pakistani nuclear arsenal, often depicted in the Western press as an Islamic bomb, that might be transferred by Pakistan to an embattled nation in the Middle East in the event of a crisis with Israel. The U.S. looked the other way when Pakistan began building its weapons system in the 1970s, and it's widely believed it now has more than 100 nuclear warheads. It's understood in Washington that U.S. security depends on the maintenance of strong military and intelligence ties to Pakistan. The belief is mirrored in Pakistan. The Pakistani army sees itself as family, the retired official said. Officers call soldiers their sons and all officers are brothers. The attitude is different in the American military. The senior Pakistani officers believe they are the elite and have got to look out for all of the people, as keepers of the flame against Muslim fundamentalism. The Pakistanis also know that their trump card against aggression from India is a strong relationship with the United States. They will never cut their person-to-person ties with us. Like all CIA station chiefs, Bank was working undercover, but that ended in early December 2010 when he was publicly accused of murder in a criminal complaint filed in Islamabad by Karim Khan, a Pakistani journalist whose son and brother, according to local news reports, had been killed by a U.S. drone strike. Allowing Bank to be named was a violation of diplomatic protocol on the part of the Pakistani authorities, and it brought a wave of unwanted publicity. Bank was ordered to leave Pakistan by the CIA, whose officials subsequently told the Associated Press he was transferred because of concerns for his safety. The New York Times reported that there was strong suspicion the ISI had played a role in leaking Bank's name to Khan. There was speculation that he was outed as payback for the publication in a New York lawsuit a month earlier of the names of ISI chiefs in connection with the Mumbai terrorist attacks of 2008. But there was a collateral reason, the retired official said, for the CIA's willingness to send Bank back to America. The Pakistanis needed cover in case their cooperation with the Americans in getting rid of bin Laden became known. The Pakistanis could say, "You're talking about me? We just kicked out your station chief." The bin Laden compound was less than 2 miles from the Pakistan Military Academy, and a Pakistani Army Combat Battalion headquarters was another mile or so away. Abbottabad is less than 15 minutes by helicopter from Tarbela Ghazi, an important base for ISI covert operations and the facility where those who guard Pakistan's nuclear weapons arsenal are trained. Ghazi is why the ISI put bin Laden in Abbottabad in the first place, the retired official said, to keep him under constant supervision. The risks for Obama were high at this early stage, especially because there was a troubling precedent: the failed 1980 attempt to rescue the American hostages in Tehran. That failure was a factor in Jimmy Carter's loss to Ronald Reagan. Obama's worries were realistic, the retired official said. Was bin Laden ever there? Was the whole story a product of Pakistani deception? What about political blowback in case of failure? After all, as the retired official said, if the mission fails, Obama's just a black Jimmy Carter and it's all over for re-election. Obama was anxious for reassurance that the U.S. was going to get the right man. The proof was to come in the form of bin Laden's DNA. The planners turned for help to Kayani and Pasha, who asked Aziz to obtain the specimens. Soon after the raid, the press found out that Aziz had been living in a house near the bin Laden compound. Local reporters discovered his name in Urdu on a plate on the door. Pakistani officials denied that Aziz had any connection to bin Laden, but the retired official told me that Aziz had been rewarded with a share of the $25 million reward the U.S. had put up because the DNA sample had showed conclusively that it was bin Laden in Abbottabad. In his subsequent testimony to a Pakistani commission investigating the bin Laden raid, Aziz said that he had witnessed the attack on Abbottabad, but had no knowledge of who was living in the compound and had been ordered by a superior officer to stay away from the scene. Bargaining continued over the way the mission would be executed. Kayani eventually tells us yes, but he says you can't have a big strike force. You have to come in lean and mean. And you have to kill him, or there is no deal, the retired official said. The agreement was struck by the end of January 2011, and Joint Special Operations Command prepared a list of questions to be answered by the Pakistanis. How can we be assured of no outside intervention? What are the defenses inside the compound and its exact dimensions? Where are bin Laden's rooms and exactly how big are they? How many steps in the stairway? Where are the doors to his rooms, and are they reinforced with steel? How thick? The Pakistanis agreed to permit a 4-man American cell, a Navy SEAL, a CIA case officer and 2 communication specialists, to set up a liaison office at Tarbela Ghazi for the coming assault. By then, the military had constructed a mock-up of the compound in Abbottabad at a secret former nuclear test site in Nevada, and an elite SEAL team had begun rehearsing for the attack. The U.S. had begun to cut back on aid to Pakistan, to turn off the spigot, in the retired official's words. The provision of 18 new F-16 fighter aircraft was delayed, and under-the-table cash payments to the senior leaders were suspended. In April 2011, Pasha met the CIA director, Leon Panetta, at agency headquarters. Pasha got a commitment that the United States would turn the money back on, and we got a guarantee that there would be no Pakistani opposition during the mission, the retired official said. Pasha also insisted that Washington stop complaining about Pakistan's lack of cooperation with the American war on terrorism. At one point that spring, Pasha offered the Americans a blunt explanation of the reason Pakistan kept bin Laden's capture a secret, and why it was imperative for the ISI role to remain secret. We needed a hostage to keep tabs on al-Qaeda and the Taliban, Pasha said, according to the retired official. The ISI was using bin Laden as leverage against Taliban and al-Qaeda activities inside Afghanistan and Pakistan. They let the Taliban and al-Qaeda leadership know that if they ran operations that clashed with the interests of the ISI, they would turn bin Laden over to us. So if it became known that the Pakistanis had worked with us to get bin Laden at Abbottabad, there would be hell to pay. At one of his meetings with Panetta, according to the retired official and a source within the CIA, Pasha was asked by a senior CIA official whether he saw himself as acting in essence as an agent for al-Qaeda and the Taliban. He answered no, but said the ISI needed to have some control. The message, as the CIA saw it, according to the retired official, was that Kayani and Pasha viewed bin Laden as a resource, and they were more interested in their own survival than they were in the United States. A Pakistani with close ties to the senior leadership of the ISI told me that there was a deal with your top guys. We were very reluctant, but it had to be done, not because of personal enrichment, but because all of the American aid programs would be cut off. Your guy said we will starve you out if you don't do it, and the okay was given while Pasha was in Washington. The deal was not only to keep the taps open, but Pasha was told there would be more goodies for us. The Pakistani said that Pasha's visit also resulted in a commitment from the U.S. to give Pakistan a freer hand in Afghanistan as it began its military drawdown there. And so our top dogs justified the deal by saying this is for our country. Pasha and Kayani were responsible for ensuring that Pakistan's Army and Air Defense Command would not track or engage with the U.S. helicopters used on the mission. The American cell at Tarbela Ghazi was charged with coordinating communications between the ISI, the senior U.S. officers at their command post in Afghanistan, and the 2 Black Hawk helicopters. The goal was to ensure that no stray Pakistani fighter plane on border patrol spotted the intruders and took action to stop them. The initial plan said that news of the raid shouldn't be announced straight away. All units in the Joint Special Operations Command operate under stringent secrecy, and the JSOC leadership believed, as did Kayani and Pasha, that the killing of bin Laden would not be made public for as long as 7 days, maybe longer. Then a carefully constructed cover story would be issued. Obama would announce that DNA analysis confirmed that bin Laden had been killed in a drone raid in the Hindu Kush, on Afghanistan's side of the border. The Americans who planned the mission assured Kayani and Pasha that their cooperation would never be made public. It was understood by all that if the Pakistani role became known, there would be violent protests. Bin Laden was considered a hero by many Pakistanis, and Pasha and Kayani and their families would be in danger, and the Pakistani army publicly disgraced. It was clear to all by this point, the retired official said, that bin Laden would not survive. Pasha told us at a meeting in April that he could not risk leaving bin Laden in the compound now that we know he's there. Too many people in the Pakistani chain of command know about the mission. He and Kayani had to tell the whole story to the directors of the Air Defense Command and to a few local commanders. Of course the guys knew the target was bin Laden and he was there under Pakistani control, the retired official said. Otherwise, they would not have done the mission without air cover. It was clearly and absolutely a premeditated murder. A former SEAL commander, who has led and participated in dozens of similar missions over the past decade, assured me that, we were not going to keep bin Laden alive, to allow the terrorist to live. By law, we know what we're doing inside Pakistan is a homicide. We've come to grips with that. Each one of us, when we do these missions, say to ourselves, let's face it. We're going to